let's talk about that ordinance so our people understand, because we agree, like, affordability is a huge issue here in Chicago, right?
Mm-hmm.
Even as developers, like, we want to do things, but there is a responsibility to keep these neighborhoods vibrant and not just come in and build a bunch of cookie cutter crap, for lack of better words. So
Right.
let's talk about the ordinance.
Yeah. So, the nature of the ordinance was to try to stop two flats or slow them down from being deconverted to single family homes. The thought was that we are losing density in this neighborhood by taking a two flat that, let's say, two families live in, or maybe a third family lives in, the illegal garden unit, and you turn it into a single family home. And now you've got 4 people living in this house that 16 people used to occupy. So you've lost density, you've lost housing for people, and presumably you've lost affordability of housing, because this single unit has to replace 3 units, and it's going to be much, much more expensive once you're done building it. So the ordinance goes into effect, and what it says basically is from North Avenue, which is 2 blocks south of the 606, to Armitage, 2 blocks north, and from roughly Western to Pulaski and beyond into Hermosa, if you tear down a building, you pay a fee to tear it down, $15,000 roughly for a 2 flat, and up higher for 3 and 4 flats and bigger. And then you have to replace it in line with the character of the block. So if the block, your side of the block, not the other side of the street, is mostly, meaning more than 50%, multifamily, 2 flat, 3 flat courtyard, you have to put minimum 2 units back on that lot. So you can no longer build a single family home, except with a couple blocks that are more single families than 2 flats. Almost all the blocks now, you cannot build a single family home on those blocks. So, what happens next? And I think this was maybe a year and a half ago, I'm guessing, that this ordinance went into effect. So what happens first is nothing, right? No one bought anything, no one built anything. And a lot of people gripe that values fell on those homes. People that maybe wanted to sell can't, because developers don't want to buy those homes because they don't know what it means. It's just, when there's the question, people just slow down and they just avoid the area. They'll go somewhere else. Now you're seeing a little bit of development, but not as much. I mean, it has been effective in slowing down single family homes around that neighborhood, or within the boundaries of the ordinance. We have seen some developers build now 2 flats. So let's say you could build a duplex up that might look like an owner's unit with a rental unit below it, or you could do 2 condos. And we've seen a few that are pretty interesting, that look nice. Politically, like, do I think it's achieving what they wanted it to achieve? No, I think the way to do so is to allow people to build 3 flats everywhere in the whole city. This R3 zoning, which is the majority of the areas we work in, specifies that if on a typical single family lot, you can only build on a typical Chicago lot, you can only build a single family home, which is, you're replacing 2 flats and 3 flats and 4 flats, and all you can build is single family homes. And then to turn and say that's evil or that's bad inherently,
when it's the only thing that zoning allows you to do, it's insane.
You can rehab the existing building, or you can build a single family. That's it. And with zoning relief, widespread zoning relief, which has been discussed and contemplated, but not enacted in any way, I think you remove the necessity to do these an ordinance like this, because if developers could build 3 and 4 flats, they would. And maybe those units still aren't affordable. Affordability is a whole nother discussion, but because new construction is just hard to build for low income, without offsets or any kind of like government subsidies. It's hard to build a new construction home for a low income family, unless you're compelled to do so, or it's part of the deal you've made with the alderman. But anyway, so a bit of a tangent.
Well, I'll do a shameless plug for our zoning cheat sheet at straightupchicagoinvestor.com. You can download that. We're talking about zoning. But the question I have after listening to you talk about this is, where'd the push come from, and how long was that push for? Like, what was it? Was it the neighbors? Was it the aldermen? Was it
driven by
how
aldermen.
it got to the table to be voted on?
Yeah. like driven by aldermen who, are responding to constituent needs, or at least the constituents that they believe will vote them back into office. So I think that you've seen a marked change in a lot of areas on the Northwest side, where the aldermen are definitely pro affordable housing and pro protecting the residents and constituents of the neighborhood. And sometimes, it is hard to navigate that. But yeah, this was an aldermanic driven process that took years to enact, and was, I think, piloted, and now it's been fully codified. But it is something that will continue to evolve, I think. I think that what this is a testing ground for this kind of legislation. And then they're going to look at it in a few years and say, okay, it worked, or it didn't work for these reasons. Let's make these changes. And you'll probably see it in more places as we move on.
In that sliver of land from Armitage North, or the north-south streets you said, was it people outside those blocks, or is it people within those blocks that were really pushing for it?
That's a good question. I mean, I think largely people feel like, hey, we've got to do something to protect the entire neighborhood from going single family and becoming extremely expensive, and everyone gets displaced. Like, it's a real need. You're seeing it. Density just decreases. Commercial establishments stop opening because you just got less and less people living in neighborhoods. Like, I'm very pro density personally in that regard. But the entire zoning ordinance is counterintuitive to that. Like, it is supporting the growth of single family homes. And I'm not a historian. I don't know how or why R3 zoning was so largely applied to neighborhoods that don't look like R3 zoning districts, but that's what it is. And I think that broader change in that could probably bring about a lot of a large change. I was talking to Prashant, who you guys have had on the podcast before, the other day about affordable housing. And, he was saying, there is no such thing as affordable new construction housing. He's like, but the best way we could do it is if we could build 3 flats, we could have an owner's unit and 2 rental apartments above, and the house itself would not be inexpensive, but the rent would cover the housing payment. He's like, and that's the closest thing we can get to affordable housing. And I totally agree with him. And I hope we can do more of that in the future.